G'day, everyone. Just a quick announcement before we jump into episode 25. We had a slight audio issue with Barry, our guest, at the beginning of the episode, but we do get that fixed. So stick with the episode and don't forget to give it a like. There we go. I'm sneaking on behind Baz there. G'day, guys, and welcome to episode 25 of the Battleforge Gaming Podcast, brought to you by Churnside Park General Games. Today, as always, we've got BFG Mark, and our guest here, we've got Anfarius. Most people are going to know him as Anfarius, I'd say, but we've got Barry Watkins, I like to say the best hand sculptor in the world, or one of the best. Like, just some phenomenal green stuff work out there. What have we been up to, guys? Barry, have you been? I know we were chatting a little bit before. You've got a secret project you can't talk about, but is there anything you can talk about? So there, I have that is the little guy with the sieve on his head. That's one of the guys. It's for what's it? Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl. Yeah,
Very cool.
I can't wait to see your whole team. If that's the standard of what one of the guys looks like, that team's going to look phenomenal. Yeah. Yeah.
Very nice.
Still very high level though. Like, I've got some pictures of your work, which I'll have to scooch down to the computer to show people eventually. I didn't include that one, but extremely detailed for the size of it though. Like, just the amount of work you've put on the face and stuff. And I'm gonna have to get you a metallic recipe, because I look at that sieve often. I'm like, man, that's such a nice finish on that metallic little hat of his. I'll have to try and hunt down some gloss nuln. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it looks. I knew it wasn't just a normal sort of wash. And Mark, how are the nids going?
They're going great. Believe it or not, I've actually pretty much finished the Hormagaunts. I've just got the last little bits of the bases to finish up, and just sort of started working on getting some proper areas set up for decent photos, because my photography previously has not been the greatest. So it's getting that down pat.
Again, like the amount of people that are like, oh, I'm having trouble taking pics of my stuff. It's a hard thing to do.
It is.
Taking pictures of your miniatures. Like, I've sort of worked out how to do the single miniatures with my reels and my photos. I've still got no idea how to take a group shot.
Yeah.
Like, no idea. So,
Yep. So
like, I'll give you a few little simple pointers for the single stuff.
yeah, that'd be great. I would love that. But yeah, that needs to coming along. My thing is, I just need to. I've got a lot of models sitting there that I have potential to be able to paint, and brain bugs have been tickling my fancy at the moment, but I need to get the battle line units done, because I wouldn't mind getting some zoanthropes painted, because they're very cool.
Yeah. So you're going to try and just get through the less fun models?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah.
That's normally what I do. So.
Yeah.
And I've recently got the land raider to like 95% that I've been painting for ages. So
it's exciting.
Yeah. It's going to be good to paint something that's not a land raider. So yeah, I'll get some. I'll do some work on it tomorrow off stream, and hopefully be able to get some pics and reels and stuff of it soon.
Very cool.
Yeah,
very excited.
Yeah. Well, with the sort of fortnightly catch up done, it's time to really get to know our guest. with the origin story, which I absolutely love to get to know people. And just so people are aware, this is probably going to be somewhat of a short episode again because we are going through Google Meets.
Yep.
So we're limited on time, but we will be aiming to have Barry on in person next year when you come to Australia, which we can chat about more when we get to it. So origins. Barry, how did you get into the hobby? Was it through Warhammer or was it some sort of other avenue? Was it like scale models? I knew it was going to happen. We've got no audio on your end. I knew it was going to happen. I saw the audio popping up. Yeah. That's a really good start. All I have to do is click that, and then people should be able to hear you. So, do you know what we might do? How about we just do a full, complete restart? Even though that's quite annoying.
Well, if people heard what we had no audio.
People had our audio. They didn't have Baz's audio.
So let Baz maybe do his run by of what he's been up to.
Oh yeah, how about we do that? Yeah. So a little bit disjointed, Baz.
It's all issues. It's all good. I take it everyone can hear all right now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I forgot to click one button.
All right, that's fine. It's fine.
So
yeah, I mean, you want.
What have you been up to?
It was a long story. Yeah, people missed out.
Yeah, but no. So essentially, like I've been working on a Word Bearers Praetor.
Yep.
Making my way through that. That's very close to completion now. As you mentioned before, I've got a little bit of a secret project, which is very exciting, and hopefully in the next, few months that will be revealed. Other than that, I have been working on my little halfling team in the background. That's my little thing for myself for painting. So
yeah, and for people that missed out, I got a paint recipe off him, so I'll pass that on to you guys as well.
Secret now,
yeah, it's a secret paint recipe. So we were just jumping into the origin story, and luckily I caught that I hadn't clicked a single button, so we didn't get too far into into the story. So Warhammer is how you got into the hobby. It wasn't through any other avenue.
No, yeah, definitely. So it was exclusively kind of Warhammer. I remember seeing the miniatures, and genuinely from a very big family, so I couldn't necessarily afford to get into the hobby. But later on, I was maybe about 17, 18, when I was studying art. That's where I kind of like stumbled into the Mark Gibbons artwork and fell in love with it all over again. And then I think I started working for Games Workshop about a year after that. And I've pretty much, barring having my children, I have been non-stop into the hobby from that point.
Wow.
Crazy. So you worked at a Games Workshop store?
Yeah, for about 8 years. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Was there a specific army that caught your attention, or was it just the game and the hobby itself within Warhammer that caught your interest?
Yeah. Space Force is one thing I've always had. Like, they were the first thing I remember seeing.
Yep.
Genuinely first thing. And then it was, at the time, I was really big. I guess it's called Old World now, but I will always know it as fantasy.
Yes.
And yeah. So it was the Vampire Counts was my army of choice. And again, especially when you're young, when you see vampires, you see the Space Wolves or Blood Angels, all of that stuff. You're hooked.
So
Absolutely.
do you like the new sort of Soulblight Gravelords, the new models that came out when they redid the Blood Knights and stuff like that?
No, I think, when you look at AOS is very much a different game, right? So I have a very, and I guess it's where Games Workshop are doing their thing is, I have a very nostalgic view of vampire counts. So when I saw AOS do theirs, it wasn't necessarily the vampire counts that I was looking for. However, I still, I mean, I think everybody can wholesale agree pretty much that the AOS range is by far the best model range that they do out there. I know
For
that may
yeah,
be
for sure.
controversial for some,
Nah, I don't
but
think
they
it's
are
I don't think
so,
it's controversial anymore.
100%. Yeah, I agree.
Even so much that I left a comment on one of their most recent posts, and I'm like, it's not even a hot take anymore. They're just
yeah.
they are better sculpts. They're just better.
Yeah, I think that team, and forgive me, I might be wrong, but it's led by possibly Seb Perbert, who is just phenomenal. A hobbyist, of the top tier, and yeah, it's reflected in that team, just knocking it out of the park every day of the week.
Yes. Could not agree more. They're just the variations and the sculpts, how they stand, just everything is phenomenal with those models in AOS.
Yeah, yeah.
So, at what point did you start converting your own models? Where did because I mean, but if people haven't seen or know of you, they've probably seen your stuff on Instagram. If they're in the hobby and they're swiping, they've more than likely seen some work from Anne Farias. When did this sculpting start to creep into your hobby? Was it early?
No. It was. I mean, I'd left Games Workshop by that point, and like I said to you a bit earlier, I'd had my children. We were obviously making my family, and it was actually I started sculpting through necessity. It sounds really weird, right? But I still wanted to be in the hobby, but I couldn't afford to have the setup and everything because I had little kids running around. So, sculpting was one of those things that I just started messing around with miniatures again. And I didn't necessarily want to paint them, but I had green stuff. It was really old, by the way. It was rubbish. So I had to get fresh stuff, but I had green stuff. And it's back when Games Workshop still sold it. So it was easy to get hold of. And I had a good friend who worked in the dental trade. And he had loads of the old kind of like descaling tools that he used for work. And it just seemed ideal for me because it was so easy just to pick it up, and if I needed to, I could just pack it away quickly. And it was kind of organic from that way. It was something that I didn't necessarily intend to do, but once I started doing it, it just felt really good doing it, creating stuff, and just simple bits. Like the first time I remember ever trying to sculpt a skull, it sent me crazy for the first day, but things started to click and I started to understand. And yeah, it's been very organic from that point on.
Yeah, amazing. Like, it's you were there one time on stream when someone was talking about getting into the hobby and how nervous they were about doing it, and then obviously the skill levels where you start seeing like the best of the best on Instagram. So people would come across your sculpting and just be like, "Wow, his sculpting's absolutely fantastic." Like I think 50% of people would be inspired by it, and 50% of people could potentially be turned off and just be like, "Well, what's the point of me starting if I can't start off at that sort of level?" Have you got any advice for people that are wanting to get into sculpting at all and they've just never done it at all? Because I've done tiny amounts, and I'm just talking like a little bit of green stuff on a wrist just to change like the angle of a hand or the angle of an arm.
Yeah. But that's exactly it, right? Is don't try and bite off your favorite project instantaneously. If you're gonna try and get into sculpting, then do exactly what you're doing. Start with repositioning of like hands, or even like rotation of shoulders or something like that. A lot of that you can get away with just by you know basically cutting and then resticking it. But like the armor ribbon that Space Marines have, it looks complicated at first, but if you break it down into its small parts, I promise you, over time it unlocks so much more customizable like poses for your Marines, especially Marines, obviously, but any conversion work you do, if you start small, allow yourself the time to fail, first of all, because let's be honest, there's not a hobbyist, especially if you're talking elite hobbyists, the ones at the very top, there's not one that hasn't failed loads. It doesn't just happen. And, time and I guess the reward of learning, forgive me, I know it sounds really cheesy, but we all have those eureka moments when we're doing the hobby, and they're so rewarding because it's not easy to do.
Yep.
Because it's something you have to actually put time into.
Yep. I'm going to bring up a couple of your images, so I'm going to jump down. You'll have to take over the order.
No,
I'll aim my mic towards me, but I don't know if it'll work. So I'll show some people some of your work. So we've got a Gabriel Seth right here, one of my favorite Blood Angel characters.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, so we've got Seth. This guy's a bit of a kit bash with some sculpting included. I'm just going to show people, and you can, if you want to chat about what I'm bringing up, then by all means, talk us through it.
Well, the Gabriel Seth is probably, I know there's lots of fancy bits on it, like the detail and stuff like that, but it comes back exactly to what we were just discussing there. The conversion looks complex, but it was done because I'd taught myself how to do the armor ribbing, which means I could get some of the different poses. Nowadays, there's a few characters or models that basically have that kind of, the two-handed weapon grab. So, there's a lot more options these days, which is brilliant. But it's one of the very rewarding things for me is I get to realize some of the characters that maybe Games Workshop, I'm sure they will do it eventually, but they're not at the forefront of what, people are necessarily expecting. For the Blood Angels, for example, I know obviously we've talked about it, Justin, with the Blood Angels, but you knew there was going to be certain characters that come out, and you also know there's certain characters that are not necessarily in their plans at the moment. So Gabriel Seth definitely is.
Yeah, they obviously can't be bringing out 5 new characters for a chapter and new units. So it was with the Blood Angels specifically. You were maybe expecting a Corbulo or Seth, but they went down the route of the 2 chaplains and the Sanguinor, which is fine. It'll eventually be something that happens, but until then, you can just get in contact with Anfarius and he'll make you one. We've got Azrael. So I've got a couple of your pinned posts from your IG. So these are the ones that are at the top. I believe you made this guy before Azrael came out, I believe.
Yeah. I would say, God, don't quote, I think maybe about 2 or 3 years before Azrael came out. Yeah. So Martin Waller, he's an incredible painter, a lovely fella. He reached out to me and asked if we could maybe work together on, an Azrael reimagining at the time. And it was, I can honestly say that was the first time I was nervous about making a miniature for somebody because, he's just so good. I'm sure you guys know him. He's won a Slayer sword. He's won multiple awards, and when you're working with someone like Martin, he's a very chill guy, but he also, and I don't mean this in any bad way, but he knows what he wants, right? And he has an image. And at the time it was artwork by Mark Gibbons again, which again, I've told you before, I love him to bits. And it was about trying to get the old aesthetic and the new Primaris aesthetic to somewhat smush together, but still, have him very recognizable as Azrael. So it was such a cool project to work on. Genuinely.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of Space Marine heroes out there that just, if they were scaled up, it's probably not even taking on the Primaris aesthetic necessarily, but just rescaled would just look so cool.
Yep.
We'll move on from Azrael. We've got a Leviathan Dreadnought here. So Is so a model like Azrael compared to this model where you're working on a heap of trim. Is there
Yep.
one that's easier or more difficult, or they both sort of have their own sort of quirks?
Yeah, I mean they have their own difficulties, of course. What I would say is, I'm sure it's the same if, say, for example, if you had a model in that respect that you had to paint. There's one that's definitely more interesting than the other one, because once you get to a certain amount of trim, you know, you start to feel your life draining away maybe a little bit because you're like, cool, I really liked this trim idea when I first started it, but now maybe 30, 40 hours into it, that trim's maybe not feeling so good anymore. So but no, with the likes of like Leviathan and even with Azrael, because sometimes I'm asked to make models in sub assemblies because it's easier to paint. That's where you can get issues because um, there's some parts that interact with others, which mean that you have to change the shape of what you would necessarily sculpt.
Yeah.
And there's always that horrible part where you have to break what you've made in order to make it a sub assembly.
Yeah, which would be terrifying.
Yeah.
We've got I don't think this is a warp smith. It's for Horus Heresy. They're not called a warp smith, are they? Something else. The Iron Warrior guy with the big.
I love that model.
With the big hammer.
Oh yeah, the Warsmith.
Yeah, Warsmith. That's it.
Yeah.
So this guy looks like he's got a ton of work in him.
He's off his head, that guy.
Thank you. It's he was. I don't know if you remember, they did the oversized Imperial Fist Praetor.
Yes, I remember people talking about that guy. Yeah.
Oh, he's huge. He's not far off a Primarch size. So when kind of like he's massive. So when I had a good friend reach out to me about doing that, we knew that was going to be the base, but I didn't want it to be as recognizable as that miniature. So the idea was to change the silhouette. So, really try and break down every armor piece. So each armor piece doesn't look like the original.
Well, definitely it does not look like the original Imperial Fist at all.
Well, I mean, fortunately with Iron Warriors, there's lots of very iconic shapes that you can go with Iron Warriors. I would say they're one of the easier legions to work with because of that, the cog design and the teeth design, and basically all of those things are very stereotypical of Iron Warriors. Extra studs, extra armor plates. So working on something like that was genuinely lovely to do. I would say the hammer was probably. That sounds really weird, but I'm probably proudest of the hammer.
It looks very intricate. The hammer. All the little bits. Yeah. So on the Imperial Fist Praetor model, do you see models that Games Workshop are going to release and then you start getting ideas for them? Like if you saw the Sanguinary, and maybe if it's models that don't look that great to the community, do you see like the Sanguinary Guard and be like, man, I've already got ideas for that. I know how I can improve on that.
Yeah. So look, I'm a hobbyist like everybody. So when I see lots of stuff, I mean, I'm very considered when I look at sculpts, if I'm being honest with you. And although there's very much a lot of stuff, if we take Blood Angels, for example, there's a lot of stuff that I like about Blood Angels, but it doesn't quite fit in with my idea of what, say, for example, the Sanguinary Guard are.
Yeah.
So when I see things like that, then it fires that kind of like I start to have those ideas about how I would go about maybe changing a few things. But yeah, I mean, it's a very deep hole that you can jump into, because you can do that with pretty much every miniature, every range, even if I like it. So Astorath, I really love the Astorath.
Yeah.
But I also want to repose him.
Yeah.
So, there's even with models that I really like,
because is that because you know that you can make that model stand out, because most people are going to have the same Astorath on the field, where you know that you've got that skill set to change a model that people can still recognize, but make it to how you want him to look.
Yeah, I think that's why. Let's be honest. I think that's why everybody tries converting, right? Because it becomes your character at the end of the day. Once you've altered it, once you've changed the post, it's yours. So I really get into, and again, it's another geeky side of it. I really love trying to understand a lot of the design decisions they go through, because it's a really big team at Games Workshop.
Yep.
People are if people are under the impression that it's maybe just one guy and then it goes to another guy and they go, yeah, that's cool. That's just not the way it works. There's a really, really big team of guys that work together to try and give us the models that we like. Sometimes it doesn't work, but hey, that's okay. That means that I get to have a go.
The last sculpt, because I've got 3 more images left. The last sculpt is the Dante that you created before they redid Dante, which I saw initially, and I was painting Blood Angels at the time, and they hadn't released Dante. I was like, man, I'm gonna have to approach Barry for a commission at some stage, which is still something I want to do. Like it, I'm not sure what it'll be. It'll be Blood Angel related.
That's okay with me.
But how much? So Dante, he looks like he's got a heap of work in like the lower legs with the with the sort of muscular power armor. And very, very smooth. A smoother area is difficult to achieve. Like they're more difficult to achieve than.
So initially they are. When you're kind of trying to do things, it can be very frustrating with the smooth areas. So you'll notice that on Dante, there's a distinct difference in the coloration of some of the sculpting work.
Yeah.
That's mainly because the flatter panels, I used a 50-50 mix of green stuff and Milliput. I mix those together. And that basically gives you kind of like the best of both worlds. The main thing for me is, once you've got that mix and it's cured, you can actually sand it or file it down or whatever you want to smooth it off. And it takes away some of that frustration of you looking for that mirror-like, glass-like flatness finish. If you're starting out sculpting, it's a really, really useful, for me anyway, that's the one that I've kind of stuck with a lot. And I find it very, very useful. But yeah, I mean, flat surfaces, simple shapes, believe it or not, as time goes on, it's the simple shapes that cause you issues, not the complex ones.
Yeah. When you're doing like Aquilas on chest, do you have like a press or a mold that you're using?
Literally a question I was about to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question.
No, it's all sculpted.
Damn. That is.
Yeah. So
wild.
I do basically the process that I actually sculpt a whole wing in its entirety at a time.
Wow. That's nutty. That is absolutely nutty. And then the last 2 images we've got, which we'll get back to the sculpting. We're going to show off some of the painting, because Baz is a hell of a painter too. So we've got some Blood Angels here. It's the Vanguard veterans, I believe, that they were painted for SN Battle Reports.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Pardo approached me about doing an army. I think we spoke before we went live a little bit, and we were slightly pressed for time for that one. So they were done really quite rapidly. But again, it was one of those kits. If I remember rightly, they've got the single jump pack from the old sign.
The Mark IV. Yep.
Yeah. That's the one. My one big regret, I think, with the new design for Sanguinary Guard. I would love to see that single kind of like jetpack.
Well, it's lucky I've got 2 whole boxes of old Sanguinary Guard.
Yeah, because they look awesome.
Oh yeah, so good. And then I think I've got a Crimson Fist Chaplain. Yeah, Crimson Fist Chaplain on a bike. Again, this is where I started following you. So I started following you when it wasn't even the sculpting that I saw. It was the Crimson Fist for the SN, and I was like, that stuff's cool as. I'm gonna give this dude a follow. He didn't follow me back.
I follow you now, though, right?
Yeah. And I was like, oh man, because I love the the color palette of the Crimson Fist. It's just so aesthetically pleasing. I don't know what it is. It's that the red hands, the dark blue armor, the silver Aquila. It's just really easy on the eyes. This guy's obviously a chaplain, so he's more black and smash heretics type of stuff. But
no, well, that's it. You're right. I think that I really love the scheme for the fists, and I think it's because everything's dark, but yet you can really make those colors pop with the edge highlights. So yeah, it's a little less forgiving on the edge highlights, I guess. But in the same token, you get them right, and it really does pop. And as you say, like the silver Aquila, I did like a blue wash in the silver Aquila, and yeah, it really helps the tyrant in. I really love painted the Crimson Fist. That was a lovely project, and the first time I've been trusted realistically to paint an army. So yeah.
Yeah, so commission painting for SN and then commissioning sculpting. Is this a full-time gig, or is it something that's starting to go towards a full-time sort of job?
No, I mean, I still have a regular day job, like a night job, but like everybody else, I guess. But yeah, it's for me, I still just see it as my hobby at the minute. I know that sounds really daft, but
I don't think it sounds daft at all. No.
Yeah, when I sit behind my desk, I'm just like every other guy that sits behind his desk. You get that kind of peace and quiet. You just relax. You escape from the world whilst you're basically working on your miniatures. I've never really thought of it anything different than that. I know, it may sound a bit weird, but yeah, I've never thought any different.
We had a guest on last week that was talking about 3D printing. So your arch nemesis. Not really though, because I mean, like everything starts off hand sculpted, and then, well, I mean, they're starting to use computers, but you could essentially hand sculpt something and then turn it into a sculpt. But he didn't want his hobby turning into a job. Are you sort of along the same lines, or is it something you think you could potentially do as like, an 8-hour a day thing and then still enjoy your own hobby?
Realistically, I would say it could be done. Whether I would want it to, that's the real question, because the passion is key to it, right? We sit down, there's a reason why we grind through painting armies. There's an underlying passion that drives pretty much everything. I think if I was to do it all day, every day, maybe some of the magic would go, Yeah. But yeah, in regards to 3D printing, it's still incredibly cool. I love to see it, but I can convert those too, so I'm quite happy.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, and talking about it sort of being a job, you do classes. So I think your most recent class that's over, is it in the UK?
Yeah, Southampton. Yeah.
So that one's sold out.
It has indeed. Yeah. Yeah.
But you are coming to Australia because one of our guests, Imsy, told us that you were coming, and I was like, wow, that's a pretty big get. When are you coming over next year?
Right. So forgive me, I've had to write this down because I'm terrible at remembering stuff.
That's all right. That's all right.
So the plan is, we're going to be in Sydney first. Now the guys at the Venue Combat Company, forgive me, I'll brutalize this, but I'm going to be doing the first weekend sculpting course on the 26th and 27th of July. And then Rob, who you guys might know, Medas Miniatures, he's also coming along, and he's doing a tank painting course. Now, as far as I'm aware, it could be like a Kratos or it could be a Sakaran, but Rob's work is breathtaking for the heresy aesthetic. He's absolutely phenomenal. So he's doing his first painting course on the 2nd and 3rd of August. And then we're going to jump over to Melbourne at the gaming arena, and we're going to do like a hobby camp. So it's like a heresy, it's like 5 days of heresy content essentially. And that's going to be like from the 6th to the 10th of August. That's the plan for that.
Wow.
That for anyone that's looking to obviously learn how to sculpt and paint Heresy, that is going to be just a one of a kind experience. Imsy asked me to go, and I was like, man, I'd love to. I already take months upon months to paint my stuff, let alone trying to add sculpting to it. It would just, oh man, it would slow me down even further. We will definitely have some details for that in the description for the YouTube, so people will be able to at least look that stuff up. And it's something that I'm going to promote on the nightly Twitch streams, because I just think it's such an awesome opportunity for people to.
Doesn't come often.
No, it's like to improve yourself as a hobbyist, a 5-day boot camp to learn how to sculpt and paint tanks, Heresy stuff like Meta's miniatures. Like you will learn so much in those 5 days.
And just to say, you know, I mean, I know I call it a Heresy camp. I mean, primarily both Metas and I are into a lot of like Heresy, but it's very transferable for
for sure
pretty much most game systems, you know. So, you know, those guys that think, oh, you know, I only like 40k, come along anyway. I promise you, you know, these skills are very much transferable.
Yeah, well, you're starting to see that in 40k they're adding a bit more weathering to vehicles and stuff. It's not the same as the Heresy sort of aesthetic, but they are starting to include that in the 40k stuff. So just the knowledge people could absorb on that weekend will be crazy. It might be like I know I say that I'm not. I don't know if I should go, but there's a very real chance I'll end up going. And we will try and get you and Rob on for a podcast in person, which will be
it'd be a pleasure.
Which would be absolutely great. We'll get some fish and chips from Imsy's fish and chip shop as well. No doubt he's tried to rope you into some fish and chips.
Yeah, well, I mean, he won't have to try very hard. I'll eat him anyway. So.
Without obviously taking away any lessons that you would be teaching at these classes, is there a base point that you could advise people to start with? Like for myself, with doing what you do, is there certain tools that you could start with? Obviously the green stuff and the milli part, but is there any specific tools, anything that for people wanting to learn, is there any advice as a starting point that you could give?
Sure. Yeah, so essentially, tools wise, people sculpt with a mix of tools. I have what I use now. I'm trying to find like suppliers that readily, because I mean, sculpting is a niche within a niche.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that's very specific. But I would say really important for me, there are Royal Sovereign. They do a color shaper. It's size 0 and it's firm. You get like a 5-pack. I think you can get them off Amazon or something similar like that. And there may be about, I think UK wise, they're about £20 maybe.
Yeah.
And
so in Australia, they'll probably be around $500.
$500. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But they're really, really helpful because unlike the metal tools that I use, because they're made of silicon, they don't stick to the putties as much. So you'll find smoothing things out a lot easier with them. As far as tools, like I say, I mean, a good mate of mine, Jason, he goes by the name of Valbjorn on Instagram. He uses a toothpick.
Okay, that's
cool. So for some of his stuff, he uses a toothpick. So there's not a set tool, I would say. The color shapers are really useful, but just find what you're comfortable with. It's much like, it's a more extreme like version of it, but it's much like with paintbrushes. You know your favorite paintbrushes. You know the ones you like to work with, and start small. Always start small. Don't try and do your favorite projects, but most importantly, just like every part of the hobby, don't be afraid to fail.
Awesome.
That's where you learn the most.
It's the big one. It's the big one that we're always trying to promote. That one. Don't be afraid to fail. I've stuffed up many models painting them. As long as you learn from it, that's the one thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a Neuro Tyrant sitting in my drawer at the moment. When I first started the Tyranids, that I made quite a few mistakes on that I need to go back and rectify once they get better.
You learn from it though. You're like, the brain area, I did this wrong. If I did this, it would have.
Trying to bring up highlights too quickly and stuff like that, I was trying to do. So, but yes, it's that learning curve.
I think there's an element of being content with your work too. So sometimes, and my Land Raider is a perfect example of it. Mark turned up and he's like, "Oh man, Land Raider's looking sick." And I was like, "Thanks, dude." I was like, "I don't like the transfers on the top." And I think with some stuff, if you're not going to the level of display, if you're doing like army level stuff, it's okay to just be like, "I don't know if I love this. I don't hate it." But still be like, what can I change next time so that I will love it as well?
Yeah, I think it's really, especially with painting, I think it's really important that you finish the miniature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's so many people like, I don't like it, I'm going to stop or I'm going to restart. And I understand that, but you know, you genuinely learn to identify your mistakes, through, just persevering. And very much so, again, it's applicable with sculpting. If I could genuinely have a visual ball of sculpting material that are failures, I probably wouldn't fit in my living room. Yeah, it would literally, I made so many mistakes, but I need those mistakes as my building blocks to learn. So it's as simple as that.
Yeah. I did this. I did that with a Scarab Occult Terminator. I purchased a bunch of Thousand Suns models, which I don't do anymore. I sort of buy boxes at a time. I bought a heap of Thousand Suns when they first came out, and I wanted to do the Blades of Magnus, which are the sort of reverse scheme. So a gold body and a blue trim, which I thought was really cool. And I started painting one and I was like, I hate this. And then I think a year later, I finished one Scarab Occult Terminator and I was like, this thing looks cool as, why the hell didn't I follow through? Yeah. I would have had an army painted.
Even if you do make those minor mistakes, like you're saying, as you guys are saying, finish the model. You don't have to be 100% happy with it, but finishing it, once you move on to your next model, you're going to realize where you did make that mistake, and then you can apply the difference on the next model, and then you can have a chance to go back and do that little touch up. You can be like, oh, me with eyes, I'm still struggling with eyes. I need to get these little dots, but I'm finishing to the point. And then hopefully once I get, it might be a bigger model and I go, okay, this is what I need to do with my brush. But don't ever sit there and spend too much time trying to fix that one little bit and be put off and get put off that, like what you're on, because it's just going to throw you off. Finish it, get it to a point where you can at least even put it on the table or in your cabinet and then move on.
Yep.
Yeah. Very much so.
So with sculpting, have you got any people you are inspired by? Is there people you look up to? Is there people is there a little community of sculptors that all catch up?
No,
is it
no.
like the stonemasons of sculptors?
Just a secret group. Yeah. No, I think we're very much like I say, we're a niche within a niche. And with that becomes less communication than you would think. It started to filter through the painting side of the hobby, which is brilliant. But no, I mean, everybody that I've kind of reached out to chat about, and people that have reached out to me, everyone's always been happy to answer questions. But realistically, there's only so many things people can say. There's no substitute for just doing it.
Yeah.
And, that's with sculpting. I think, I can't stress this enough. Everyone I have spoke to has been amazing and super friendly. In regards to like people that I look up to, there's tons. I'm sure, I couldn't really name all of them. There's so many. I even go to clay sculpture. I do, even people that sculpt in clay. I look at some of the things they do and it inspires me because I understand, I go onto YouTube and see how they move the tool around the clay. And although the medium is different, it gives me an idea how to work. And yeah, my inspirations come from everywhere. Artwork, people painting, yeah, I'm a total geek for the hobby. Like I say, I just there's everything I love about it, and I find inspiration in my Instagram feed and just random like images of the hobby, and obviously the Space Marine game that's coming out and all of this stuff, and my brain just the Space Marine game, it might be a bit detrimental to the hobby.
Yeah,
It's going to be very
the trigger
detrimental.
word, the absolute trigger word, Space Marine 2. Yeah, that will consume some of my stream time, I would say. It will be taken up playing some Space Marine 2. The paintbrushes will be done off stream for a little bit, but that's okay. It'll come back. So you're saying artwork is one of your inspirations. So if you're doing say a character that exists in the books, will you try and hunt down images of said character to try and
100%.
yeah.
Yep. So it's not only official artwork, but it's all the kind of like unofficial artwork. I'm sure you've maybe Googled images and people have done their own interpretations. The Dante that I did, that was taken off of the front cover. That was my main inspiration with the pose. But also a mix of, I think, his latest story arc where he was fighting against Tyranids on Baal, I want to say. Forgive me, I'm not 100% with the new lore, but yeah, it's artwork everywhere. My computer is it's generally got about 8 tabs up of artwork when I'm working on a specific miniature, and that's just so that I can have a real good look and just into the background of, and specifically now if it's legions for heresy, I'll have it could be anything up to 15 tabs of just artwork and images that are reference points for me to work.
That works for painting too, because I'm doing the same thing. I'm about to undertake a palette cleansing model from Pluto Miniatures, a fire elemental, and this is out of my realms of my regular painting. There's not many hard edge highlights on this model, so I've already started doing the same thing, hunting down a bunch of images of stuff I like the look of and seeing if I can then replicate that with paint. So very, very similar mediums, the sculpting and the artwork in terms of inspiration.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, and I guarantee because you're doing something different, this will be a massive learning curve for you.
For sure. It'll be frustrating, but I will learn from it. 100%.
I'm excited to see what you do with it. It's going to be very cool.
I'm nervous. Like
I'm excited to see you get frustrated over it as well.
I'll be right. So future plans, apart from coming to Australia, which would be super, super cool, on your radar in the near future, what are we going to see? After the Blood Bowl team?
Yeah.
Have you got a project in mind that a personal project? Obviously you've got commissions with your sculpting. You're going to have you're going to have 2 or 3 BFG Blood Angel projects on the go. A Corbulo.
Yeah.
A Corbulo.
Yeah, Corbulo. Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah. No, I think initially I would love to kind of get back to a point where I'm maybe doing some gaming. I've started to miss the gaming side of things again. So me and my hobby brother are basically going to be looking at starting a heresy army. So that would be something I'd love to do, a Space Wolf army. That's kind of like I've started doing what every hobbyist does and buying the miniatures before you have any chance. So I've started stockpiling some heresy miniatures, and I'm just waiting. I'm fingers crossed that they do Mark II Space Marines, because that's kind of one of my things. So, but other than that, I don't know how kind of like much you know of Mortime.
I know it's the sort of necromunda of the fantasy type of area.
Yeah, pretty much. So that's one of the games when I used to work in Games Workshop. That was one of the games that I just fell in love with, the aesthetic and just the daft nature of the game itself. You know, it's one of these ones where you can break your own legs, which is it's just phenomenal. It's just phenomenal. So yeah, the idea of like maybe getting a warband up and running for that would be that would make me happy. Yeah.
How much conversion sculpting work is going to go into the Space Wolves? Is this something? Is it like just going to be characters and your battle line units are sort of just going to be pretty vanilla? Or?
Yeah. So the nature of Heresy is, it's like I always think of it as like a more distilled version of the aesthetic you're used to in 40k. So they will be lots more line troopers. However, you know, it's just my nature. I'll start messing around with quite a few of them. Yeah, for sure. And the characters, I would like to think that they're going to get a fair bit of attention. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you undertake that, you're just going to do a single test model to go or to begin with, or are you just going to jump straight in and assemble 30 guys and start airbrushing them like crazy?
Well, I was going to say, I'm useless with an airbrush, useless. So, I mean, it just so happens I know a guy called Rob. And Rob's he's going to airbrush base, I think, a lot of the army. So then I can just get it up and running, because I am very much a troops kind of guy when it comes to Heresy. So, you know, I'm thinking maybe there's going to be at least 40 Marines on my table to start. Wow. So, and then we'll kind of go from there. But best laid plans and all that. We'll see. I'm not going to guarantee things for you, but that's my ideal. That is my ideal.
Well, I'm excited to see a potential Space Wolf test model. I think it'd be cool, because we haven't seen a paint post for a while.
No.
Yeah. It will get there, I promise. Okay.
Mark, what are we looking at in terms of Tyranids? Do you think you're going to have a break from your Tyranids at all, or do you think you're just going to go straight through?
No, I'm going to get. I'm the same. I'm keen to have games, but I don't know if I'm keen to put all the models together and play with them grey. After the effort I've put into painting at the moment, I want to at least get the minimum of a 1350 army going, and then we will see from there. But I love the bugs. They've got such a variation. It's what I like. I get to stir people in the BFG community, you know, because there's a lot of Space Marine players, and Space Marine players normally like to squish the bugs, and the bug players like to eat the Space Marines. So that I have that behind it. There, I have a army in mind that I wouldn't mind doing a little bit of converting. I've always wanted to do a Kroot army, but kind of a smart Kroot, and convert it with Tau a lot. So I have been looking into that, but I know I'm a man of habit, that can go down that really dark path of buying a lot of models and doing nothing with them. So while I'm on the path of actually getting an army complete, I will stick to that and just have that as like my little secret obsession in the back of my head at the moment. So it's definitely the needs at the moment.
No, it's good. It's good impulse control. That's one of those things, you know, it's very easy to, because I'd like to think a lot of people in the hobby are the same.
Yeah.
So I go to bed and I think about potential armies.
Yes.
A lot. And all it takes is to get one for me to be like, well, that's it. I'm getting an army of that.
At the moment as well, even during the day and stuff at work, I would listen to audiobooks to do with 40k and that, and I hear stuff about sort of the aesthetics that I like within certain armies. I'm like, whoa, like Night Lords. I love Night Lords, and then so I like the Corpse of Krieg. So my brain's like, oh, I could do that, and then it's like, no, calm down.
Well, relax. That's what you started sending me messages. He's like, I'm listening to some Night Lords audiobooks, and I was like, that's dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
So I am actually a little bit obsessed with the hobby at the moment. Everything, I'm always, even when I'm lying in bed, I try not to just flick through random, I guess, TikToks and Instagram. It's either a hobby and looking at other, like as you were saying before, Barry, looking at how other people are painting their nids, and where there's still certain things that I'm doing with my army that I'm not quite hitting what I want with my flesh, but I'm seeing how other people are doing it with other tones. So that's sort of where I'm investing my time too. If I'm not painting, and I'm not, you know, I'm still a gamer as well. I like to play video games with my brothers and stuff, but when I'm not doing that, I'm not painting, I'm looking into how to improve myself or into the gameplay itself so I can kind of keep up because it's always changing.
Oh, dude, I'm out of loop when it comes to gameplay. After DreamHack, when we didn't pick dice up, I'm just like, oof. When we start rolling dice for the battle reports, we're gonna have a warm up.
I practice rolling dice by myself.
Oh, well, you guys have seen me roll dice. I try to limit that. It's not good. It's not good. Yeah, so I think that's brought us to the end of our podcast because we do only have an hour. Yeah, we've got 5 minutes. So some pretty good timing. I really do need to look down the avenue of a different chatting program because an hour's pretty short, but short and sweet because we will have Barry on for another podcast in person, which will be absolutely fantastic. Apologize for the start of the podcast, guys, with the audio issues. I have no idea why my OBS had our guests' audio on mute. Yeah, it should automatically be on. But anyway, we didn't miss much, so all the details for future events that Barry is taking part, I will put in our details of the YouTube video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I didn't say that at the start. I said it at the end. I missed it. 100% missed it. I realized once we started chatting to Baz, I was like, I didn't say it. And I never say it, but it doesn't matter because people don't anyway. So it's all good.
It has been a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, I was sort of before we go, I was sort of fanboying. People have chatted to me and I'm like, oh man, we've got Anfarius on the podcast. It's gonna be so good. And they're like, oh yeah, how'd that happen? I was like, oh, I saw a Baz Watkins join the Twitch stream and it was the name, and I was like, man, I know that name. I'm sure I know it. And I was like, I'm gonna go out on a limb. And I was like, I may sound stupid here. Are you Anfarius from IG? And he's like, yep. And I was like, oh my God.
I can tell he's been excited as well because he's been sweating, but the lights are hiding it. So you can.
That's why I got the beanie on. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining us on episode 25, episode 26 in a fortnight. That's a year of doing podcasts. So that'll be our birthday podcast.
Well.
And we've got Uncle Brush on. We've got Brush Liquor on for that. So that's going to be a bunch of fun. 2 international chats in a row. We might even get some more. So thank you very much, guys. We'll catch you on the next podcast. Take it easy.
Thank you.
G'day, everyone. Just a quick announcement before we jump into episode 25. We had a slight audio issue with Barry, our guest, at the beginning of the episode, but we do get that fixed. So stick with the episode and don't forget to give it a like.